Welcome to our Kids Min Zoom. I'm super excited to have Reverend Michelle King here with us today, and she's going to talk about disability ministry with children and families, and she's going to share a little bit about what she's doing in her work and ministry before she gets started. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. Happy to be here. I'm a deacon in Kalamazoo. I work for my ministry appointment is at Griffin Place doing suicide prevention work. And I'm the convener of the Division on Disability Concerns, which is part of the Board of Justice for the Michigan Annual Conference. And I did children's ministry a few years ago at Chelsea, and have worked with children with special needs at summer camps and stuff when I was younger. And another thing I'm doing right now is helping plan Advocacy Day for the Michigan Conference. And so a bunch of United Methodists are planning for about 300 people to come from across the state to the Capitol and talk to legislators about gun safety. So I can also answer questions if you have them maybe later about that, if you're interested in learning more about Advocacy Day. Just wanted to put that plug. I do have a PowerPoint that I will share. Give me a moment. Find the right tab. Oh, let's go to the first page. Okay. So disability ministry with children and families. And that's my email address at the bottom. So if you want to write that down, or I'm sure Kathy can send it to you later as well. I want to start with this picture. And so I can't see the picture because the Zoom, all your Zoom faces are there. So I'm moving that over. So you might need to do that as well. That's what I'm saying, if you can't see it as well. And then I have an image description on the left. It says it's a one-panel cartoon. A person is shoveling snow off steps as a group of children wait to enter a building. Could you please shovel the ramp? Asks a child in a wheelchair. All these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you, says the person shoveling snow. But if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in, replies the child in a wheelchair. The image is captioned underneath. Clearing a path for people with disabilities clears a path for everyone. So I remember seeing this a few years ago, and it just kind of has stuck with me ever since, and I was glad to be able to find it again. Does anyone want to share like what this says to them, or what they get from this message, from this picture? If you do, you can just unmute yourself and start talking.
It seems to me a reminder for those who have privileges, whatever they are, to be aware of those who don't, whatever those privileges are.
Yeah, to be aware of them and not forget about them or ignore them. What else?
I'm always reminded that I know we still have work to do in this country, but I'm always reminded how far ahead we are of other countries. After living abroad, there weren't very little accommodations for people in wheelchairs and for people who are disabled in Europe, and especially around the tourist places. It was interesting to see the difference. So just a thought.
Yeah. We have accommodations like ramps and elevators exist and are pretty prevalent in the United States.
I'm getting the needs of many outweigh the needs of one vibes off of the comic, be that good or bad.
That's certainly what's happening, right? The person shoveling snow is accommodating the needs of the many or the needs of the person in the wheelchair.
I don't know, did somebody say this? Like, if they would clear the ramp, then everybody could enter through the ramp. So I think it's just saying that by making the building accessible to the child in the wheelchair or anybody with a disability, then everybody else can enter through that same portal.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm also getting that the person shoveling was never educated about what would be better for everybody and is just doing what they know.
Hmm. Yeah, they're assuming the steps are the priority. But as someone said, if they prioritize the ramp, then everyone would be able to use the ramp, even those who aren't using wheelchairs. And then he could do the steps and clear the way for people, and then people could choose if they want to use the ramp or the steps. Yeah, so in our discussion today, I kind of want to emphasize the point that like most accommodations for people with disabilities benefit everyone. They don't just benefit the people who have a disability. They make things easier for everyone. And we see that a lot like in our society, that once things become used by the average person, even though they were originally developed for people with disabilities, then they kind of blow up. So I'm thinking about fidget spinners, right? Those were designed for people with special needs to help soothe them or calm them or keep their hands busy while their minds are doing something else, help them pay attention, right? And then, but it turns out that lots of people are using them, even if you don't have ADHD or autism or a diagnosis that would typically mean you might benefit from a fidget spinner. Weighted blankets are another one. Those have been used in the special needs community for a long time, and in recent years have become more popular for people with anxiety and more like the general population, right? So even if someone doesn't have a diagnosis or doesn't have a diagnosable disability or impairment, these accommodations can be beneficial for everyone. And then I have another image. Oh, now you're on the bottom. That's probably good. Some disabilities look like this. And then there's a series of simply drawn people. I almost wrote stick figures, but they're not really stick figures. I didn't know how to describe those white figures. Drawn with various physical impairments, including someone using a wheelchair, someone using a walker, someone using a cane, crutches. And then under that text it says, some look like this. And it's just a simply drawn able-bodied person. So we can't see that person's disability, but they have a disability that we don't know about. They have an unseen disability. And so that's important to keep in mind too. You might not always know if someone needs some sort of accommodation. You might not know if someone is dealing with a diagnosis. And so being prepared to help those people as well. Remembering again that a lot of accommodations will be beneficial for everyone. So I have kind of categorized it into these three. These aren't the best categories. They're just ones that I wanted to use today. So physical disabilities, so someone who is visually impaired, someone who's blind or has trouble seeing. Hearing impairments, mobility, so someone who uses a wheelchair or a walker or a cane or crutches. And gross fine motor function. So if someone has trouble using their gross or fine motor skills, those would be some physical impairments. Developmental, again, this is kind of category I wasn't quite sure about, but Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. There's also overlap in these. So like the gross fine motor function can be a symptom of these developmental disabilities. And the neurodivergent are the ones that are more hidden, the ones you might not be able to see just by looking at someone. And neurodivergent is a term that means someone's brain works differently than the average person. And it encompasses a lot of different diagnoses, including ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, dyslexia even is categorized there. Dyslexia meaning having trouble reading, like the words, the letters can flip around when someone's reading, making it difficult. And then mood and personality disorders can also be considered neurodivergent. Someone who has depression or anxiety or OCD, or any other mood or personality disorder can be considered neurodivergent. And I don't want to focus too much on like the different diagnoses and different symptoms, because I don't think that's super necessary for you to like know when you're doing ministry. You don't need to know someone's diagnosis necessarily in order to be supportive of them and accommodating of them. And but I just want to get these some general categories out there. Here's some simple or examples of accommodations that you might be able to make in your space to accommodate a variety of those disabilities. So first one, I put wide spaces between chairs and tables. Who do you think that benefits? Who would that help?
People with physical disabilities who have a hard time, well, either if they're a wheelchair user, they can, slide in, or if they use any sort of other physical thing like a cane or a crutch or what have you, they might have an easier time getting in a chair with more space.
Yeah. Who else might it benefit? So physical impairments for sure.
I think everybody, just kids that can't keep their hands off of one another. I don't know. It just seems like it would help everybody.
Yeah.
I think maybe it could help with somebody with anxiety to not have to sit super close to somebody else.
For sure.
All of the above, but also a parent that has a stroller or something that wants their child to sit right next to them. So somebody without, going back to your cartoon about all benefit.
Yeah. I also think of probably adults in larger bodies. So fat people, right? It's, as someone who's a little larger, not the largest, it's really frustrating when I go to classrooms because part of my job is going into schools, and I have to like squeeze myself in between these tiny tables and chairs, and then all the students have their backpacks thrown around as well, and it's just like, how am I supposed to pass out my information, this handout, or like trying to squeeze into a tiny bathroom, right? Those are things that can be hard for people in larger bodies, or squeeze into chairs that have arm rests. So those are all great examples. I think it seems like a lot of times where we try to cram as much as we can into a tiny space. And then that doesn't make moving around easy for anybody. It's like if you have a wheelchair at your church, you could try like going through your rooms with pushing the wheelchair through your rooms to see like, is there like enough space in here, or do we have things really super close together? Another accommodation you might make is having flexible seating, which I have a link at the end, or a website at the end that has some options for that. These can be kind of expensive to purchase, but they can be really helpful for people who have trouble sitting still or trouble focusing. So they include stuff like various kinds of like bouncy chairs, like chairs that you can kind of wiggle or bounce on. Not spin. I don't think spinning is helpful. That can be distracting, but bouncing a little bit. So exercise balls even. And I saw some exercise balls so exercise ball in general, but like I don't think I'd be able to sit for a long time on that, but kids might be able to. But there are some that have like little feet so that they do like stay in place, but you still have like it's still an exercise ball type thing. Or like cushions to put on the chair that are textured. And those are some examples of some flexible seating. So rather than assuming everyone will be able to sit still and pay attention in those rigid chairs that we normally have, having some options for people. And another combination would be having a quiet space set aside. If you have, whether it's a different room or just like a corner in your room. And I think as people of faith, we could call it a prayer space. But in when I was doing summer camp with children with special needs, there's a sensory room. My friends with their toddlers have a cool down tent, a chill down tent. And so that's, I think that their toddlers know that if they're getting really upset, getting really mad about something, they can go chill out in there and kind of cool down. And so that can just be like a comfortable, cozy space for them to kind of escape from the noise and commotion of whatever is happening in the room. And if you want to call it a prayer space, you can have some stuff in there that for prayer, like a holding cross, a hand cross, like I have here. I also have like knitted pocket crosses that you can like hold, right? Prayer beads. This is an example of a simple prayer bead. So these are like some tactile prayer tools that I think would be helpful in a space like that, or in your sanctuary's prayer ground or grace space even. Simple decor, so not too stimulating. I think there is a couple decades maybe where their children's ministry rooms were like highly decorated and there was lots going on the walls. You know, every wall was a mural and there was like a lot of activity and, you know, lots of things. But that can be really distracting and really can be overstimulating for someone who might have a sensory processing disorder or who has ADHD. And so keeping things simple and like not trying to go all out on that can be helpful. And then I have earplugs and noise canceling headphones. So like if your worship is loud, someone who has a sensory processing disorder might not have a good time there. And so I've seen like in mega churches, I've seen with some mega churches that they have like those disposable earplugs, the foam ones. They just have like a carton of them that you can just like grab a couple because they have like, it's basically a concert, right, in those mega churches. So that's an idea, or some noise canceling headphones, a couple pairs for anyone who might want them. And those could go in the quiet space too. And then fidgets are great for everyone, right? Pipe cleaners are my favorite fidget. They're quiet and kids get so creative with them. I was always amazed when I went to Chelsea at how creative the kids were. Like some boys would like make me necklaces out of the pipe cleaners, and or they would make like different scenes with the pipe cleaners. They would be very creative. And then again, I have more fidgets. I have a link, a website for a place that has a lot of different fidgets. So fidgets help. So I find keeping my hands busy helps me focus on whoever's talking. So like if I'm coloring or if I'm knitting, I used to knit in class when I was in college, or if I'm doing something, it's easier for me to listen to the person talking. So this is true for some kids as well. And so if their hands are busy doing something, then they might be better able to pay attention, or it might calm them down, be soothing for them. those are some reasons why fidgets can be helpful. And so I've mentioned pipe cleaners. There's a lot of different squishy balls as well. There's different things that you can like bend and stretch and turn into shapes. And some considerations. So part of my work, I do have like a box of fidgets at work. And some things I consider when buying them is sound level. And so I don't buy fidgets that make noise, even if it's like, it's not designed to make noise. Like sometimes fidget spinners can make noise. So if you're getting a fidget, I try to like spin it first and see how loud it is. Or those pop-it things, those are really popular right now. But like, they're kind of noisy when you do the popping. And so I don't buy those because I don't want that distraction in my setting. But so that's something that's one thing that I consider. Also, how easy is it to clean? So like kinetic sand, I have a coworker who really loves kinetic sand. And I'm just like, how do you, like, you can't clean that. Like, how would you clean that? But maybe there's a way and you can research it, but I haven't researched it. But so that's something that I consider. How easy is this? How can I easily wipe this down with a wet wipe that I have in my room? And then also another thing I consider is like, what will happen when this breaks? So they're gonna break. So those like squishy balls, they're always gonna break at some point. But so how messy is it gonna be when it breaks? And do I want to, deal with that when that happens? And then replace it, right? So do I have the money to replace this when it breaks? And the cheaper ones are going to break sooner than the ones you spend more money on. So those are, some things that I consider when I'm buying fidgets. And then going back to like the prayer thing, the prayer, tactile prayer tools. I've made this glitter bottle. This is actually not necessarily prayer, except for the fact that I added a dove sequin to it, and then I call it the Holy Spirit. Not at school. When I'm at school, it's just a bird. But when I was in a church, I called it the Holy Spirit. You probably won't be able to see the dove, but there's a dove in there. So this glitter bottle, calming bottle, you can make these or you can buy them on, I'm sure, people sell them on Etsy probably. And this one's held up pretty well. I've had it for several years now. And it's just nice to watch it, be pretty. It can be calming. This is one I bought recently that I really like. Except I wish it had more glue so that the stars would float longer. I also kind of wish it was just a full circle or circular ball that I could just like roll around. But this is probably better. This I bought at a craft, it's called Handcrafted in Kalamazoo. So it's not, if you're local to Kalamazoo, you could go to Handcrafted and get these, but that's a store that sells things that local people have made. And then I've already showed you the prayer beads I have and the holding cross. This is similar to a glitter bottle. It's a prayer bottle I made a few years ago. And so it has like a list of things you can search for in it, and then pray. That prompts you to pray about. So let's find the cross. Where did I see God's love today? But you can also just find the cross. And then there's a palm leaf to represent being thankful. There are some reflective sequins that are represented in mirrors. Don't look silver anymore. So where do I see God in myself today? There are sparkles, there's glitter. So where do I need to shine my light to help someone today? And then there are seashells, and it says to say the Lord's Prayer. So you can find the different things in here, and those different things can prompt you to pray in a certain way. That's just another tactile activity. I think I found that on Building Faith, but I can look for that. And finger labyrinths are another good one to put in a quiet space or a prayer space. And I had an Etsy page at one point that I made and sold these, but it's closed now because I wasn't didn't have time to like sell it. But I first made this on cardboard. So when I was at Chelsea, I made this on cardboard. But then I tried to make like nice versions. This is a figure labyrinth and it has like a raised edge. And so when you print it on paper, like I didn't like that I couldn't feel where I was going with my finger. Like I wanted to be able to feel the path. And so, well, this one has like puffy paint that I used to make the path. And so you can feel the path as you go along, and that can guide you along. This one has yarn. And so I found a labyrinth pattern that I liked because this labyrinth pattern has it's one continuous line. So when I was doing yarn, it was easy to do one continuous line of yarn. So, and then I have a little one too, so it's small. Those are some like faith-based fidgets, I think, that you could use in your space. Moving on to your lessons. Some things you can do to accommodate different disabilities are having closed captionings on your videos. People can read what's being said if they can't hear it. And again, lots of hearing people like to read closed captionings too. It helps them not miss what's said, or if someone's talking quieter in the video, they can still hear, they can still see what's happening. Image descriptions you can use. I modeled that at the beginning of the video, so someone can't see the image, describing what is in the image can be helpful. On screens, avoiding bright white backgrounds. So all of my backgrounds on here are like a light gray. I changed the background color to not be just white, but to be a light gray. But that I think we have all experienced getting kind of tired by looking at a bright screen for long periods of time. There are some fonts that are like that people with dyslexia find helpful. There are some that were specifically designed for people with dyslexia, which you might be able to find, but Arial, Courier, Helvetica, and Verdana were like the top 4 that I found were helpful for people with dyslexia to read. So they're not fancy, they're not cursive, because that can be harder to read. In general, I guess sans serif fonts are helpful because they don't have little extra lines that like make it look nicer, but can make it harder to differentiate the letters. So trying to be aware of what fonts you're using. And I put avoid overstimulations, just being aware that some people who have sensory processing disorders or who have trouble with loud noises or big crowds or bright lights, which can be really fun and exciting for a lot of kids, but having an option to be sensitive for them as well, a place. So even if they go to that quiet space during that time. And then making sure that your crafts and your games, you have adaptations. You've thought about like how you would accommodate someone with different types of disabilities. So you probably already make adaptations for different age levels. And then just broaden it to think about how would someone who is in a wheelchair participate in this activity? How would someone who is easily distracted participate? How would someone who has some sensory issues participate? And so like thinking through some of those things when you're making your lessons. And then I have some basic classroom management things. I think setting expectations rather than rules is helpful. Again, for everyone, no one likes rules. They're more like to rebel against it if it's a rule, but an expectation. Like this is the expectations we have for our classroom. This is how we treat each other. This is how we behave, mostly how we treat each other, right? This is how we create a respectful environment. And then making accommodations, not exceptions. That's mostly affirming that when you make these accommodations, they're accommodations, not exceptions. So when someone comes up to you later and is like, well, why did that kid get to do this and the other kid didn't? Like, well, we're accommodating their needs, right? That's something that we talked about when I was doing at summer camp, right? We weren't making exceptions to the rules for certain kids. We were accommodating the different needs. And having an extra adult, I know you with safe sanctuary or safe gatherings, you have to have 2 adults anyway, but you know, if some churches have like a buddy system for kids with special needs. So they'll have an adult who's paired with them specifically to help them with things, especially that's can be especially helpful if your quiet space or prayer space is in a different room. And they need to go to a different room in order to decompress or calm down, right? But having an adult who's kind of managing things in addition to the adult who's teaching the lesson, or having multiple extra adults if needed. But just making sure you have enough adults to accommodate and whatever the needs are that are presenting. Other tips I have: be prepared. So parents are gonna want to see that you already have some things in place rather than, you know, they don't want to ask you to create programs for their children a lot of times. And so being prepared for whoever walks through the door is helpful, but also being flexible and being able to change gears if someone who has a need that you weren't anticipating or weren't expecting. And being curious. So it's often said of autism that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And that's true of any diagnosis. If you meet one person who has ADHD, you've met one person who has ADHD. If you meet one person who uses a wheelchair, you've met one person who uses a wheelchair. And so everyone, that's kind of why I didn't want to focus too much on like the different symptoms of different diagnoses or different characteristics, because it varies so widely among people. And some people might have some symptoms or some signs, but not enough for a official diagnosis. And then they might still benefit from some of these things. So being curious about people, politely curious, right? Like don't interrogate someone, but you know, wanting to find out what their needs are, what's going on. So someone's misbehaving, or in your eyes misbehaving, like what's going on, being curious about what's behind that, rather than jumping to conclusions or jumping to making assumptions. And then, so lakeshorelearning.com is a site that has lots of different flexible seating options. Therapyshop.com has a million different fidgets that looked awesome. And I also wanted to touch on the Scene project for a minute. I should have put his name. Matt Witkowski developed the Scene project, which is he has selected like, I don't know, maybe 20 books, children's books about special needs, various different disabilities and special needs. And he partners with churches who want to make a relationship with a school. And so the church can buy that package of books and donate it to their local school and make a connection that way. So if you want to participate in that, you can email him there. Or you can buy the books for your own church library, which would be great too. So he has lots of great books. And so that's kind of teaching children about these different needs and different disabilities, and building empathy and awareness among the children as well.